I want to add my welcome to all of you and my thanks to Lorna and Kevin. Really appreciate y'all. And I have to tell you, I have never had 3 speakers to introduce in 2 minutes. And so we're going to do that today. I have an order that I'm using, and I'll leave it to you to figure that out. But let me begin first by thanking all of them and telling them how excited we are to have them here today. There will be some time for Q&A afterward. First, Faith Alejandro. She is an attorney and, among other specialties in the law, practices labor and employment, nonprofit and tax-exempt, business litigation, and privately held and small business law. She has an undergraduate degree. She is a Wahoo from University of Virginia in 2005, and she graduated University of Richmond Law School in 2010, magna cum laude. Among her many recognitions, she was, by the Super Lawyers group, included in the business litigation category from 2016 through 2017, and as a legal elite in Virginia, Virginia Business Magazine 2015, 16, 17, and 18. Faith is married to Chris Nixon, who is here. Chris, where are you? Raise your hand. There he is. And they have 2 children, and she is a member of Westminster Presbyterian Church. Janet Broadway, whom I've known for a number of years. She is Director of Human Resources for Sands Anderson. This is a Sands Anderson event, by the way. But they all bring a special piece to this topic. And Janet brings over 20 years of experience in human resources in her career. She, among her many professional affiliations, she is a member of the Society of Human Resource Management and the National Association of Legal Professionals. She has an undergraduate degree from the Virginia Tech location up in Blacksburg. She is a Hokie. And she has a master's degree in organizational management from the University of Phoenix. And she and her husband, Brian, are members of Hope Church. Tom Ebel. You notice there's been sort of an age increase as I've gone to these 3 people. Tom Ebel is shareholder and member of the business group of Sands. What did he say? I didn't hear that.
We cut it off right there.
I'm on a roll, Tom. I'm doing this fast. Tom is a shareholder and a member of the business group of Sands Anderson. He served on the firm's board of directors from 1999 to 2007 and as president of the firm from 2001 to 2007. Recognized as one of the best lawyers in America from 2016 to today. And if you will allow me something personal, he currently serves as the chair of the executive committee and a member of our board of directors at Needles Eye. His education, he is a graduate of Hampton-Sydney in 1976. You know, I wasn't going to say anything about Hampton-Sydney, but my colleague here, Doug Rucker, who is on our board, did, but I'm still not going to say anything. I obviously went to the school in Ashland, if you don't know that. Tom graduated from Hampton-Sydney in 1976, magna cum laude, and from the University of Richmond Law School in 1979. He's married to Liz, and they have 2 children and, quote, 1 7/8 grandchildren. And he's a member of Third. And we have known each other for a long time. I want to thank again our board, our panel for serving today. This is going to be really exciting to listen to their thoughts on work-life balance. Help me welcome all 3 of our speakers today. And you're up, Thomas.
Thank you, buddy. Can everybody hear me? Just point out I am younger than Buddy, though, so well, it's just a privilege for us to be able to do this. I feel like I'm a thorn between 2 roses and between a Wahoo and a Hokie, and I'm certainly humbled by that. But I thank everybody for coming. We really appreciate you coming and appreciate your interest in this topic. The topic's work-life balance. There is an abundance of information about this out there. There are books, there are blogs, there are podcasts. It's sort of a hot topic. And we want to disclaimer right from the beginning, we are not experts. We're not going to pretend to have all the answers. to the work-life balance challenge. We're just three people who are trying to meet the demands of working and life and our other responsibilities just like the rest of you. We intend to approach it from a personal viewpoint, from our personal viewpoint, but from a faith perspective. And we hope that what we have to share with you will help you and let you know that you're not alone in your struggle, and will provide you with some tools that you can use to help you better achieve work-life balance. Sean Boyer did an outstanding job last month, and he's a really tough act to follow. We're going to try. It's tempting to repeat a lot of what he did because he did such a good job, but we're going to try not to do that. We're going to try to expand upon what he did. And Gina Mayo, if I just got to put in a plug for her, you've got to hear her. She is just an amazing lady. So please come back in May. As Sean stated, there is really no silver bullet answer to the work-life balance question. It's just life. It's all life. It's all bundled together. So we're going to try to look at how do we make it better? How do we take what is a challenging situation and how do you make it better? We certainly applaud what Sean said. One of the things he suggested about it is being more, if you weren't there, being more intentional about how you plan your personal life. We all have goals and objectives and strategic plans in our business life, and he encouraged people to have those in their personal life. We don't have a lot of time. We got three people, and let me tell you how we're going to approach this. It's going to be sort of rapid fire, and we want to try to then leave time for y'all to ask us questions, because that's really what I think a lot of this is about. We're going to focus on three things. What is work-life balance? What do we think people mean when they refer to it? And what is it that we're actually balancing? The second thing we're going to share with you is what have been the challenges, problems, and failures that we have each encountered in our process of dealing with it. And third, we're going to each try to give you some practical suggestions of things that we have used to help us meet this challenge. Within those three topics, the three of us are going to approach it from our own perspective. And with respect to faith, as you've already heard, I mean, from her perspective, she's our young professional, our millennial. She has, her husband Chris is here. They have 2 young children. She works for our law firm and for a law firm, which is a demanding profession. She's involved in her church. She's involved in her community. I get tired just listening
She's not just involved in the church. She's the clerk of our session and has been for 6 years.
Says the pastor of our
That's the
church.
pastor of our church.
Let's get that clear.
So that just certainly lays even a deeper foundation for what she's going to have to say. And so Janet is our HR director, and what Janet is going to do, she's going to look at it from a perspective of an HR director. What has she seen work? What has she seen not work? She has been with us how many years?
Almost 18.
Almost 18 years. So she's seen. She was right out of college. But she's seen what people in a very stressful environment in a law firm do that works well, and it's things that don't work so well. And me, I'm the token senior citizen.
The wise one.
As Buddy's pointed out, I've been struggling with this for almost exactly 40 years. When I graduated from law school 40 years ago, I'm going to look back on what I've done and what I think I've not done right. But so that's my role. Let us work through what we're going to do, and then we hope to leave plenty of time for questions. So the first topic we're going to deal with is what is work-life balance, and I'm going to start with Faith because she's juggling more balls in the air than certainly I am. So if you could share, and we only have 2 microphones, so if you'll bear with us.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation with you. It's a conversation I have all the time, and sometimes without finding out what the answer is. But for me, when I think about work-life balance, we're talking about the series of decisions and choices that we're making on a daily basis, and hopefully also on a long-term basis, as to how we're going to live our lives. And hopefully here today, talking about it through the lens of our Christian faith, we're hopefully doing it in a way that we're trying to attain a life that is lived to glorify God, right? That we're living lives that serve others and that lead, that our lives are full of love and we can show love to those around us. That's hard to remember when you're trying to pick up the 5-year-old and the 2-year-old and get them registered for kindergarten, as I did today, and make sure that they're going to have a ride home and get fed and all of that. It's hard to think about that. So Jordan, I'm with you, buddy. But for me, the way that I get through it is I have a wonderful partner, my husband, Chris, and I don't give him enough kudos, and we've managed to work out a schedule that makes sense for us. But I try to take a long view. I take seriously what the Bible says about how for everything there is a season. And right now, the season that I'm in with 2 young kids who are 5 and 2, yeah, my preoccupation is about the daily who's getting who, what, where, when. Maybe in 10 years it's not going to be as much, and so maybe I'll focus a little bit more on some risk-taking in my career. But while they're young, they need me to be very present in the daily choices of what they're making, and I need to work on these formative years of trying to build resilience. I see Susan Holt, the wonderful parenting coach. We want to use positive discipline to raise wonderful, kind children who love God. And so I'm very mindful of being present for them as much as I can in these formative years. So yeah, I'm making choices on a regular basis that sometimes, if I have the ability to make the choice, because I also recognize this is a very privileged conversation we're having, I'm trying to make choices that means, you know what, I didn't make it in home in time for bedtime the last couple of days. I'm going to not go to this marketing event for work. I'm going to go home and see my kids and be there for my kids. And putting things on my calendar so people can see that I'm at home. And I try to guard that time as much as I can. From the millennial perspective, I think millennials are also taking that longer view of life, that we all are living in different seasons. I think we've grown up in a time when we saw our parents and work really hard, and our grandparents work really hard, and then see their savings go away with the recession when the market tanked. And so I think we've seen that, and we see how we graduate now with increasing student loans, increasing debt, and enter a market that doesn't have high-paying jobs, and where you need a graduate degree to get a decent job. And so we're saying to ourselves, we've got to just forget about this racket about being in the office all the time. We want balance now. We don't want to have balance when we retire. So we're not buying homes fast. We're not having kids fast. And I think as I see new associates come in, I see a difference even between when I entered the market and when associates are coming in now. They're asking for balance. They're asking for flexibility. I think on behalf of millennials, it's not coming from a place of, oh, I don't want to work. I think we look at work and we want to work smarter. We think we can add value by working more efficiently without being in the office all the time. I think we're very comfortable with technology and how that can help us do that. So right or wrong, it's a conversation that we're definitely having. So from my perspective, I think what helps me is taking that long view, and I think millennials do that as well.
Thank you, Faith. Terrific. Janet, from the HR perspective.
Okay, so as you guys can see, I have the great pleasure of working with Faith and Tom, but I'm going to come at this from a very different perspective. So in my job is to create and promote a healthy environment. So what does that mean exactly? So from the business side of things, healthy means billing a lot of hours, being profitable, being successful, having a lot of clients, having a good reputation in the business side of the world. As I flip to the people side, healthy means having a good environment, having engaged employees, having people really enjoying their work, going home happy, going home fulfilled, going home feeling that they've been appreciated and feeling like, wow, I have the best job on the block. So what is work-life balance? I have to look at every day work-life balance from both of those vantage points. And so the first thing that comes to mind with the question of work-life balance is, I don't exactly know what work-life balance is or how to tell people to achieve it. My goal is to support people in their careers in the way that they want it done. So there's no right answer, there's no magic formula, there's no one size fits all. And so in my position, I feel like I'm more of a traffic cop at the work-life intersection.
And sometimes sometimes there's a big traffic jam or some wrecks, right?
Exactly.
That are not your fault. So, particularly when you're dealing with lawyers. But for me, the work-life, and this is just my personal perspective, the work-life balance challenge or question has always been sort of a work-life juggling. I mean, it's more of a juggling act. And I was telling my wife this morning, I often take on more than I can handle. I imagine none of y'all do that out there. And I think if you look at and I think our culture and I think our society, pushes you in that direction. They say, be all you can be. Do as much as you can, achieve, make it. Make a lot of money, be the best, all those sort of things,
And do it right now.
and do it right now. And either our clients or other, and I want things, done right now, and I want to see results right now. And that makes balancing a lot harder. There's sort of an instant gratification. It's all about me culture. And if you think of a juggler, a juggler just has two balls, and that may be what we should do. That's pretty easy. You can just hold them. But if you've got one in the air, and then if you add a couple of more, it gets harder and harder. I don't care who you are, you've got to pay more attention. The more balls you put in the air, the more attention you got to pay to what you're doing, and the more disciplined and organized you have to be. So I think one of it, and I'm going to talk about this in the second segment, but one of them is getting the right number of balls in the air, or maybe no balls in the air. But for me, dealing with work-life balance, the question has always been one of priority. And we've gotten a lot of theology from the sports page with Tony Bennett, but many years ago, I'm reading the sports page, and I can't remember what football coach it was, but they asked him, he said, what are your priorities in life? And he said, my God, my wife, or my spouse, my family, my friends, and my job. And somehow that stuck with me. And but I also think it's great to say you got to get your priorities straight, but they got to be the right priorities. And I think you have to look behind, you have to look behind those priorities and take some time looking behind those priorities and say, what is really, really important to me? And because, and I've certainly had this in my own life, unexpected things will happen. You can chart your course, but things that you don't expect, whether it's losing a job or the illness of a family member or the death of a family member, you have to have those priorities well set, and you have to be able to go back to them, because you can do all the planning you want, and it may not work out exactly the way that you expect it to. There is a scripture verse or verses that I have used over and over again that I really wanted to share with you in this context, because I think Jesus hit this issue right, hit the nail on the head, and it's in Matthew 6:24 through 33, and he said to us, no man can serve two masters. For either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. But what's interesting, and I've always read that, well, that's hard. I got to make a living. I got to feed my family. How am I going to? It's great for him to say that, so how do I do that? And he immediately answers the question. He said, therefore, do not be anxious about your life, what you'll eat or what you'll drink, nor about your body, what you should put on. Is not life more than food, the body more than clothing? And if you remember, he goes on and talks about the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. And then he says, will he not much more clothe you of little faith? Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be yours as well. So when we're faced with all of those things, what has helped me over the years is I go back to this passage over and over again, and just seek first his kingdom. If you have a decision to make, seek God first, and I think and have given thought to your priorities and prayer to your priorities, and the rest of them will start to fall into place. And we'll talk some more about that in a practical sense, but that is certainly sort of have been my view, that there are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things, a lot of balls that we have in the air. But if we can think carefully about our priorities and stick to them, it'll help us deal with that. So now we're going to talk, because we're all human, and admit to me, we're going to talk about where we have not gotten this right. I mean, that sounds great. So,
Sure.
Yeah,
So my confession to Tom and Janet this week was that this week I have been way out of balance. My husband just came back from being out of town in Chicago, so I was parenting solo since Saturday. Work has been very hard. I've been working a lot during the day, and then putting the kids down quickly so I can stay up to the wee hours of the morning. And people are coming up to me the next day saying, "Why are you sending me an email at 2 a.m.?" And I said, And when I have those days, the struggle is sleep. I mean, that's the biggest challenge for us right now in this stage of our life, is enough sleep. And thank goodness for folks like Jeff Bezos and other CEOs who are shining a light on how much we need sleep, and almost making it trendy for us to talk about sleep as a thing that we should actually fight for. And I think God tells us to make sure that we are restored and that we rest, right? He worked 6 days and then rested on the Sabbath. And when I think about how I feel when balance is not there, or I'm feeling like I can't get a handle on things, you're just pulled in so many different directions. I mean, we have our kids who need us. We have clients. And our clients are coming to us not to buy a product, but they're purchasing services to help them deal with big conflicts at work, big troubles, serious legal troubles. And so we take that very seriously, and we understand that answers need to be given to them, sometimes yesterday. And so we want to serve them with all the skills that God's given us and serve them well. And so we want to work, and I think God wants us to work and use the talents that he's given us to the best of our ability. But it's hard when you have that much pressure coming from all stages. And so the challenge is somehow fitting in sleep in the midst of that, even when you're trying to do it for the right reasons of serving God and honoring what he's given you. And I try to, when I feel that way, I try to slow down best as I can. I try to make space. Psalm 51 is one of my favorite psalms, because it's also one of the favorite songs that we like to sing in our church choir. Create in me a clean heart, O God, renew a right spirit within me. It speaks of restoration. It speaks of being upheld in his spirit. And I have to force myself to slow down and remember that a lot of times, and get that rest to restore. Because, it's a shame that our culture tells us to have it all, and to have it all right now. We pride ourselves in multitasking, right? But especially in our profession, where we have to think, we need to make space to think so we can think creatively and help solve problems for our client. It's a shame for us to discount the need that we have for space to process high conflict situations and to have the mental capacity. And we can't do that when we're sleep deprived. We have to do that when we're feeling restful. And we just can't come up with solutions. And if you have no sleep, that leads to burnout, that leads to resentment, that leads to poor relationships, that makes you a bad parent. You're yelling at your kids more when you have no rest. So when I have that challenge, it takes a lot to remember to slow down and to get that rest. But for me, that's always a struggle.
Thanks. And Janet, and why don't you go to the third one as well, is sort of where you fell short and what you recommend for people to do to solve the problem.
Okay. So, to me, work is intended by God's design to be honorable and noble. And it gives me such great joy to see employees like Faith and Tom being highly successful in their positions. And I know the stress and pressure and gravity that their jobs haven't for them. So nothing makes me happier when things are going well. Nothing makes me happier. But on the darker side, I think often, getting back to my intersection reference, often people land in my office when they are dealing with the consequences of lack of sleep, or they've gotten themselves into a bad place and they feel like they have to make a decision of work or life. And I feel like it's also by God's design to be someone in my position to listen and to be use my faith skills to help someone. It's not my place to make their decisions. It's not my place to fix their problems. It's my place to listen and help them sort through what's going to work best for them. But I hate when people get to the point where they feel like they've had a head-on collision between work and life. I hate when they get to the point where they feel like they have to choose work over life or life over work, because I don't think that was the mission. I think I'm very honored in my position. I came up under many great people. Tom was president of the firm, so I feel like I'm the torchbearer of a great culture that promotes collegiality, it promotes teamwork, it promotes coming together. So our philosophy, and I hope you guys will support me on this, I think our philosophy at Sands Anderson is to hire employees for the long term. And with that, just the statistics alone, if you're going to work somewhere like we have for the long term, everybody is going to have something in their work or their life where they need extra support, extra grace, extra forgiveness. And so if we all stick together, we're much more likely to have success because we have to build each other up. So I think you wanted me to talk about what could we do. I think really being supportive of each other, really having the teamwork culture, really having grace gets back to the point of we just have to help each other out. Loneliness is a very difficult spot to be in, so it's okay to ask for help. I always hope that I'm someone's first call if they're feeling overwhelmed, if they feel like they need extra help. I really want to be a place of grace where people will ask for help and they won't get in trouble for it. They won't get demeaned for it. They won't get their raise taken away. So I think I'm also at the place where, Sands Anderson is a business. It's a successful business, and we have very successful people. Our employees, it's a meritocracy. So quite honestly, you're rewarded when you're doing great things, but we also have to keep that in check. And so I think I'm kind of in a good place when I'm at the intersection, because sometimes I know why someone did. There's a correlation between stress and issues, and sometimes I can help get to the bottom of those.
And I know we're running short of time, but real quickly, just one story out of my life and then what I've done about it. Many years ago, I woke up one morning and found that I'd committed myself to 5 things outside of work.
That's it?
So it was, it was church, community, bar stuff. I could go on and on. And I set a rule after that, and it took me years to work out of that, and a lot of negotiations with my wife. And I set a rule after that that I wasn't going to ever commit to more than 2. I'm just, if I had to, somebody asked me to do something, no matter what my ego told me to do, no matter what I thought it might do from a marketing standpoint, I'm only going to do 2. I'm going to give a couple quick practical suggestions, and then I'm going to let Faith finish up with, what works most for her. But just a couple of things that have helped me, that I really, really believe in dealing with this, is starting every day with prayer. I know people are busy, and I know that it's hard to find that time, but the days I don't do it, I can really, really tell the difference. My Needles Off small group, some of whom are here, I'd be remiss if I did not put in a plug for them, but community, small groups, support from others when you get overstressed, to have a place where you can go to unload. I'm going to just take out the men for a second. A lot of men don't do that. I think the ladies are better at relationships and being more relational. Liz and I have had that debate many times, but place where you can go to unload is critical. And then the last one that I'll throw out is observe the Sabbath. And, that should be Sunday, but sometimes it can't be Sunday. But I cannot tell you, I committed about the same time I over-committed to the 5 things. I said, I'm going to take 24 hours straight off, whether it's from Friday night to Saturday night, whether it's from Saturday to Sunday. I'm taking 24 hours off. And again, that sharpens the saw and makes a big difference. So, Faith, why don't you wrap us up with that?
Oh, I agree with trying to set blocks of time to not check email. I try to work hard Monday through Friday so that I can give myself the space to not check and not be beholden to clients on the weekends. That's the time for the family so I can be present with them. So I agree. I don't want my tombstone to say, you just were really good at checking email all day. And what I find is when I don't check email, sometimes it just resolves itself because other people on the chain come up and step up and deal with it. So I've given myself more permission to not check and answer right away. My husband and I, we use this great family planning app called Cozy, where we can plan our recipes, we can have our schedules sync up with our Outlook calendars, so we know we're at least able to keep up with each other about what's going on, so we can be very instant in managing our schedule. That's a very important practical thing from our standpoint. And then from my perspective on a daily basis in terms of keeping track of all the things that I have to do, I keep very granular to-do lists. It used to be that I would say, work on this case file, but now it's summarize this interview and start the outline. The more granular I make it, the easier it is for me to check stuff off, and then I get the momentum and I keep going. So it just kind of keeps me going through the day. I also try really hard to integrate work and life. I mean, it's all life, like we've all said. But I have the privilege of being the clerk at Westminster, and Joel Morgan's our pastor, and he's here. I'm going to brag on him a little bit. He does a great job with leadership development because he understands that for your session, they better be good leaders. And so he's spoiled us with lots of leadership training that he doesn't realize I've taken to work, and I've integrated in the committees that I help lead and the leadership things that I do. So I've been able to integrate that leadership role at church with the leadership role that I've cultivated at work, and that's been wonderful. And truthfully, in our practice, in terms of building businesses and books of business, we get that more in the community. When we commune with you all, when we commune with other community and nonprofit groups. So it's wonderful to be able to commune with non-lawyers and then plant the seeds for potential business. So that's another way that I try to integrate so that it's not just feeling like work versus life, so that they're not at odds. And I try to, I'm also very open about my schedule. I keep it on my Outlook calendar that everyone can see. I tell people, I'm going to go register my daughter for kindergarten tomorrow, so I am not going to be able to answer the phone, and I try to guard that. Now, to be honest,
told us that this morning.
I did. Well, it was on my calendar, but I'll say that I did work my butt off the first couple of years before we had kids, and I put in those extra hours. And I think for me, when I showed my value and showed that if you give me the chance, I will show you that I can add value, I think that cultivated trust that Sands Anderson has had in me to know she might not be at her desk, but I trust that she is going to get this done for me, and that gives me the space to have a little bit more control over my schedule. So my tip to especially millennials is show your value as soon as you can, because that's going to buy you a lot of time. And then the hardest lesson for me to remember, but I think it is an important tip, is to remember, and I got this from a great book called Essentialism by a guy named Greg McKeown. It's a secular book, but he's basically talking about all the stuff that we said. His lesson is that no is a complete sentence. The art of saying no, the idea that successful people say no, that's the hardest thing that I have to remember. But what I love about what he says, and what I think we've all talked about, is that when you say no, you're giving yourself the space to say yes to something that might actually be important in your life, and that might actually be in line with the way that you've chosen to live your life in service of God. And then the other thing that I try to remember is that God's grace is amazing, it is huge, and it is humbling. That is humbling to me. So in trying to reach this perfection of balance, whatever that is, it's easy for me to say, forget about it, because God is here for us even when we're not perfect or as perfect as we think we need to be. He doesn't treat us the way that we deserve, right? And thank goodness, because it would be sad otherwise. So I try to keep those in mind. There are days when I definitely get it wrong. There are days when I think I do a little bit better. And thank goodness for being in a place where I'm given the chance to do that. So the other tip, of course, is come work at Sans Anderson. So.
Well, and I know that we are not perfect because we have run over time and we have not been in balance, but I apologize for that. But I think we certainly would like to have a chance to answer any questions if there's time to do that.
This is not necessarily the first time Needle's Eye has been out of balance. So, anyway, don't you agree we did a good job? So we are going to run a few minutes beyond what we normally do. We're not quite there yet, but we'll go a little. If you need to get up early and leave, please do. We'll take a few questions, and I have one over here. Earl?
Yeah, I've got one for the whole panel. I've been a therapist for 16 years. I want to run 3 men's groups, and I'm part of Tom's group. And we now have a 5th women's group starting up. And these are professional women. And I'm thinking that the thing that the group has taught me is how to balance my life. And I'd like to speak possibly to Tom about how group balances life.
Well, I knew I could count on Earl for a really, really tough question. But I think, first of all, it's what I said before, is having a place where you can go when things get tough, and there is the trust in the group. I mean, we've been meeting over 20 years, maybe 25 years. And it's, the group's confidential, and you can share anything. And I mean, I get, and that's a place where you can be held accountable, and you can find love, and you can find guidance. And I just think how it helps balance is I can't tell you how many days I would show up there out of balance. My priorities were out of whack. And first of all, I'll say one thing: I'd go in there and hear what some of the other guys had going on. It was way worse than what I had going on. I come in and say, I got to talk to these guys today. I'm going to go crazy if they don't help me with this. And I leave there saying, boy, I'm thankful that I don't have to deal with what Earl's dealing with or what Blair's dealing with. So it is a dynamic process, but I think there's so much literature out there that despite all of our technology, we are alone. We're disconnected. We're more connected and less connected at the same time than we ever have been before. And we need to be connected to real human beings who can give you the real love and real support.
Thanks, Tom. Another question? Peter?
It kind of seems to me that as you progress in life, it gets more complex. You move from singleness to being married to having kids, and it just gets more complex, more and more responsibilities. And then also the advent of technology allowing us to do more with less time is making things more complex. So my question is, can you speak to some of your decision-making factors? So maybe Faith, as your life has gotten more complex, and also Tom, as you have gotten to a point in life where it's gotten so complex you have to take things out. So what's your decision-making processes for figuring out, okay, this is not going to get on my plate because it's going to add too much complexity? Or Tom, what's your decision-making process for taking something off, like later when it's gotten so complex and figuring out what to take out?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because with our kids, you can already see kids getting scheduled up as early as our kids are, which are 2 and 5. And so I have conversations with parents all the time, like, are they doing swimming? Are they doing gymnastics? They're already being told to live a life out of balance because they're being told you should need to do all of these things because that's the only way you're going to get into college. I mean, we just put that pressure on ourselves. And frankly, I don't have the time for that. And my husband and I, we've tried to say, well, we want them to learn piano, so we'll make that a priority. And so we try to limit to like one activity. But it does take sitting back, I think, and saying, this is what we want them to do, and so we're going to say no to the rest of it. It's hard when everyone else is doing it, right? From a work perspective, when I'm not having a day of triaging, it is thinking about what space do I need to give myself to serve this client and what their goal is as much as possible, and trying to hold on to that time as much as possible. I'm trying to do a better job of that. And this year I'm actually rolling off of my clerkship, my clerk duties, and also off of nonprofit board and another one. So I'm trying to say, and I've already been approached as I'm rolling off those commitments to consider other boards, and I've said no. I'm going to have a year to reset. I'm looking at doing something else, but that will not be, that kind of volunteering. But I need to just have that space because my daughter's starting kindergarten. We're getting ready for a change. So I've tried to give myself the permission to say no to that. So I don't know if that helps.
One more. Got one more? No? Pierce.
Well, I had a question, but it's turned into a comment, which is this. I was going to ask the panel, how do you remain compassionate at work? Because if you're seeking the kingdom of God first, compassion to your neighbor is pretty big. But I heard about 15 examples of being not only compassionate to others, but being compassionate to yourself. So I congratulate you all on embracing that, whether you call it that or not.
But if I would answer that one way, which is why this passage of Scripture is so important to me. You were there, you were at Santa, and people come to you and they may want to talk about something, and they want to. There are two parts of it. One, keeping your antenna up to be compassionate, so that you're not so driven by what it is that you're doing every day that you sort of notice somebody sulking or you notice somebody missing a day here or there, whatever it is. I know Janet is phenomenal at that, and so that's one part of it. And then, you sit there and say, I'm not going to worry about my billable hours. I'm not going to worry about calling the 3 or 4 people back that have just called me. And that's to seek first His kingdom. This person needs some help. They need to talk. They need to air something out. So you just have enough faith to just put those things aside. And then the part of that that's so important is that, seek first His righteousness, His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be yours as well. So God will take care of you if you do the right thing. So,
Thank you, Tom. Thank all of you.